Welcome to this Forging Player Series, Greens in Regulation, or GIRs. So let's go take a look on what makes up a GIR and how we can train it.
Welcome to our Forging Players Greens and Regulation video. I'm Gareth McShay, and during this video we are going to assist you in understanding greens and regulation standards, approach dispersions, what is an acceptable miss, creating a shot cone. So we will define a shot cone and assist you in utilizing that on the golf course, fingers to create that shot cone as we play in real time.
So let's define what a green in regulation is. Inside of GameForge, we define this as par value minus 2. So simply saying is
par 3 will be reached in one shot, it's minus 2. A par 4 we will reach in 2 shots, and a par 5 in 3 shots.
Greens in regulation is probably the number one mover that'll allow you to change levels inside the Forging Player Series. So you can see as an emerging player, a player that shoots somewhere in the 90s, we're looking at less than 6 greens in regulation. So that's basically you hit 1 and miss 3. And as you can see, as you progress through the actual Forging Player Series, a tour player is looking at about 13 greens in regulation. So the more greens we hit gives you more opportunities to make birdie and also gives you less opportunities to have to scramble. So greens are really important and powerful inside of scoring.
Yeah, this is a pretty stressless way to improve your ability to play golf. The more greens you're on in regulation, the less scrambling, the less pressure you're under to try and make up for a previous error. So we really believe this is an area where a lot of players will benefit.
And also with greens, you got to understand that greens go all the way back to the tee box. So we've got to be able to hit a good tee ball that puts us in a position that we can actually access and hit the green. Once we're in that position, we really got to take care of what's necessary, and that's hitting greens. Greens are, like I said, of the utmost importance if you want to be able to change levels inside the Forging Player Series. Or the delta of change between an emerging player, a player that's shooting 90s, to an elite player that's actually getting close to scratch. You know, they're producing roughly 6 more greens in regulation than you are. So again, just understanding that there has to be a lot of growth inside of greens if you want to achieve your next level.
I think, Brian, it's worth mentioning as well that this can oftentimes be dramatically affected by whether or not a player is playing an appropriate length golf course. If you're hitting 3 woods and hybrids into every par 4 in the course, you're really not having a fun time, and you're probably not going to hit that many greens in regulation. So it's something we will discuss further, but it's worth mentioning now.
This assessment is simply tracking greens in regulation while you play. We have a developing player's scorecard. These are the main stats that matter for a developing player, and we're actually going to list which greens we hit with a simple checkbox. And of course, GameForge will do a great job of tracking greens in regulation for you with your round inputs. So let's look at some performance goals for each level. We have an emerging player, we're looking at 6 greens in regulation, a developing player at 7, proficient at 9, advanced at 10, elite 12, tour 13. You can see the progression of the greens as you advance through the Forging Players Series. Now you have the standards in front of you. Let's go after there and get it. Record and track your greens in regulation. So when we're hitting our approach shot to the green, there's a dispersion, which is how we leave the ball proximity-wise to the pin. And what we were able to do in this graph is actually show you the average proximity or the average percent distance from the hole. So as a learning player, you're looking at a 20% dispersion. So at 100 yards, you're looking at 20 yards left or right, long or short, kind of in that big diameter is your average leave. So that's whether you hit the green, miss the green. That's all shots into the green is roughly at about 20%. As you can see, as you progress through the system, you can see that the average lead for a tour player is well under 10%. We're getting in the 8% category for all shots. We can also look at, but here's the really neat part, right? So kind of as we talked in the past in other slides, what does the learning player do roughly as well as a tour pro? When they actually hit the green in regulation, their dispersion from the hole is very similar. Again, the big difference is the tour player is doing that as an earlier slide at 13 times around, where the amateur or the learning player is looking more at 5 to 6 per round. So again, when we actually hit the green, you can see that our proximities are very similar to a touring professional.
This really highlights when we get players striking correctly and hitting more greens in regulation, their proximities are good. It's just a case of we need to assist you in doing it more regularly.
Exactly. And I think the other really neat part is you can see that when the player misses the green, which is your upper line, their dispersion grows as well, but their average miss as a learning player is a little bit less than a touring player. That's once again, so the touring player by percentage is bigger, but the reason for that is, again, is their proximities are closer. But you can see that there is a linear growth as well as we're improving our dispersions, our greens get a little bit close. So when we hit the green, it gets a little bit closer, but as we progress better, our misses get better, the actual percentage of miss. And again, all the greats in golf from Jack Nicklaus to Sam Snead all said, it's not how well I hit my great shot, it's how well I miss my bad shots. So you can really get a good understanding of why high-end players tend to miss less shots as their dispersions are just not as big.
And because we understand the data, Brian, and we're basing this entire series, this is performance-based on data, and we're going to lead you to performance in a different way than the golfing world has seen before. We can acknowledge that there are misses in golf, and we understand there are misses, but what we want to do is help you control the miss and when you miss, and understanding the expectations levels you set for yourself as you play.
I think this slide will really define what is actually happening. So just to kind of give you a premise, kind of in your mind's eye, see this. We got a 30-yard green from depth and width. So pin's stuck dead in the middle. So we have 15 yards short, left and right. So pin sitting dead in the middle. And by dispersion, what shots would actually hit the green? So you can see at 150 yards, I can have a 10% miss, left, right, long, short, and still be able to hit the green. But if I push that dispersion out to 15%, which a learning player is averaging 20, you can see you're kind of missing, you're going to miss the green. So this graph gives you just a really simple way of understanding. To be able to hit the green, I've got to be able to control my dispersions, is a mathematical view of what it takes to be able to hit more greens.
Yeah, we're not talking about elimination of dispersion. We're talking about minimizing it, a reduction of dispersion. That's important for players to realize. Brian, I'd love to play this golf hole. I've never stood on a perfect circular golf green.
What?
Yeah, 15 yards every direction.
United States.
I got to stand on that putting green. Yeah, fascinating data, and I think it's showing players, regardless of where you find yourself, is it the 20%, the 15, the 10, the 5? I mean, if it's 5, you're playing on tour. You don't really need to listen to us talking. But when you go out, it's realizing that if at 100 yards you normally miss by 20, we just want to tighten that up and get it to 15. That's our first step. And that's what we'd like players to understand.
And this really goes to show you how difficult it is to hit greens, especially as we're learning. We're starting to try to understand how to control the golf ball, so, really understand controlling what's happening with the interaction of club and ball. So, at 50 yards, you can see I can have a 20% dispersion miss and still be able to hit this green, right? But, basically once I get outside of 50 yards, if my dispersions aren't getting better, or my total dispersions aren't improving, that just makes it hard to hit greens. And again, that brings that first graph back where it shows that learning player is really hitting 6 greens. The reason why it was their average miss was 20%, right? So again, just understanding that when your average misses at 20%, you overall, any shots outside 100 yards, you're probably not going to hit the green on average. So that's why that actual greens and regulation number is really tiny for a learning player. And that's why point of focus inside of golf and understanding how to play the game. So it's really important for videos to kind of define what's happening. And if you're not accomplishing at the level we're prescribing, that gives you a good avenue to go find a coach to give you the ability to be able to control your golf ball a little bit better.
This also gives you a great indication of the level above where you currently are. And that's what you should have in mind when you're training. It's we don't want to jump from a dispersion of 20% to 10%. That's a massive jump. It's unlikely to happen very quickly, but you can target that area that is just above you. It's a little bit currently outside your comfort zone, but gives you a great a great target to strive for, and something you can achieve in coming weeks or even months, and go up another level.
Now we're going to define what we call a shot cone inside of GameForge. The one line actually shows our target line, which is ball to flag. And then the secondary line is our shot cone, is our shot shape. So as a learning player, developing player, we might not have full control of the shape of the golf ball, but as we progress through the Forging Players series, we want to take misses on left and right of the green, long and short. We really want to start defining half of the green from the pin over that we want to target. So that's a shot cone. So it's target, which would be the pin here, and then what percentage I can miss right or left, depending on shot shape, on where I want the ball to leave. So being able to define a shot cone and be able to train your shot cone gives you an advantage when you actually go to the golf course. So when I see flag sticks where pins are stuck in certain conditions, or there's certain hazard conditions, I know that a disproportion of the time that I'm going to end up in my shot cone. So that tells me where I need to change aiming parameters, or when I can really go after pins because the cone fits perfectly in the actual pin placement. What we're really starting to do is say, when we talk greens and regulation in the beginning, we're talking this big, huge green missing left or right, long or short. With shot cones, what we're going to start to do for the better player is starting to define half the green. We don't want to overturn the ball past the target line. We always want to be target line right or left, and therefore, again, controlling what we call a shot cone is really just starting to define what the shot shape looks like.
It also gives you an idea of the size of target you have as you stand over the golf ball. So, there's this concept of take dead aim. Of course, take dead aim, but take dead aim toward a shot cone that gives you some opportunity to miss and still be successful. So if the pin is hanging off the edge of a green with a water hazard beside it, we want your shot cone to the opposite side, which gives you some wriggle room and yet still get you in a decent proximity to the flag.
And the beauty of the shot cone is it really defines what a good shot is, right? So if I'm a tour player and I have a 5% miss, which is 2 fingers, which I'm showing here, that means that anything from pin to my 2 fingers over is technically within parameters of a good shot, of a dispersion expectation. So again, what it does is it allows me to paint a picture just by simply holding up fingers to create the shot cone, and really define what is acceptable for my shot. And like I said, what this does for targeting is huge. If I'm targeting a pin and the outer edges of my shot cone actually end up in a hazard, bunker, or just a really bad place to be, I can simply slide my hand over slightly so the outer band of my dispersion is still hitting the green or staying away from trouble. So again, this just gives you a quick visual trick using fingers, which we're going to talk about on the next slide, on how to define your shot cone and make sure that a good shot doesn't end up in a bad place. Again, this is the graph that we just looked at, but this is how we can take it to the golf course, right? Instead of taking your scientific calculator out there and trying to say, what is 15% of 100 yards? What we're able to do is really define that with fingers. So if you just roughly stand over the ball, extend your arm, just kind of relatively straight, and then roughly take fingers and apply it to the target, right or left of the zone, and that'll actually show you what percentage miss. So if you do 2 fingers right of the flag stick, that gives you a 5% shot cone, or understanding what my average dispersion would there if I was at 5%. If I'm at 20%, which is more of a learning player, that's actually 8 fingers. So if you actually hold up both hands and just kind of tuck your thumbs, that is the actual expected dispersion from the flag stick. As a better player, we're going to, again, define a shot cone of right and left. But as a learning player, that's 8 fingers each side of the flag stick, right? So this is a big understanding of what this shot looks like. Inside of training and starting to understand this, if you are actually working at a 20% miss, how many shots can I hit within 8 fingers? And then I'm going to go to 7 fingers and 6 fingers and 5 fingers. I'm going to keep progressing and starting to understand, as I can control the ball better, I'm going to start defining and reassessing what good is, or what my dispersion is, because dispersions equal greens, right? If I can control my dispersion, I can aim better and I can hit more greens. And that's what this whole video is about.
We're going to cover this in our assessment videos and give you different drills so you can ascertain your current miss and then what the level above that is, so you can go and train accordingly. What I love about this, Brian, is this translates to the golf course. You can bring this straight onto the course and use it. So you get your yardage, be it off a distance measuring device or whatever, and you can quickly convert that and go, well, a decent shot for me will be within these parameters.
Exactly, within these parameters, and I can actually set my target to really influence the greatest chance of me to be able to hit a green in regulation. And then we hired a supermodel here to actually tell you dispersions, and just simply by holding up fingers what this would actually look like. So again, I think the beauty of the fingers is this has been used throughout time for measuring from star to star in warfare by being able to dial in infantry and, battles with cannons and artillery. And also anybody that uses aim point golf understands the fact of using fingers allows you to paint that picture of break. Well, we're doing the same thing, but we're doing it with targeting. Simply holding up fingers gives you the ability to paint a picture. And the beauty, like Gareth said, is you can take this on the golf course today and actually benefit your game and start to put things in your advantage to be able to hit more greens. Inside of this 10-ball assessment, we're simply going to hit at a target and record how many shots end up within our recommended dispersion for our level. So this is a developing player. We're looking at a 15% dispersion on average. So we're going to calculate how many shots ended up 15% or closer. And also with a developing player, we're going to go either side of the hole. So you have 6 fingers or 12 fingers total across the hole to see how many shots you can end up inside of that cone. As we progress, the percentages will get tighter, and we'll only use half of the cone. But you can see, as a developing player, we're really starting to learn to control the golf ball. And if we can start hitting more shots on average, 15% or better, we'll start hitting more greens. So good luck, and make sure you record these inside of GameForge. In this assessment, you can see the parameters have gotten a little bit tighter and tougher. We're going to use tour players' averages, which is roughly 5% miss, which is roughly a 5% dispersion, and using 2 fingers. But we also cut the green in half. This would be a player that works the ball from right to left. And again, our goal is not to overdraw it past the target line and keep it in our shot cone. So again, this drill and this assessment has gotten a little more challenging. We're going to hit 10 balls, record inside of GameForge how many shots actually end up inside of our zone. Also to the left, I'm going to drop the expectations by dispersion by each level group. So that'll give you a good idea of what's expected. Remember that a tour player, elite player, and advanced player will be cutting the green in half, where the learning to proficient player, you can miss on either side of the pin as a start. On behalf of Gareth McShay and Brian Bailey, we want to thank you for spending time in the Forging Players series on greens and regulation. We look forward to your next level of progress, and keep looking for videos inside of GameForge with more assessments and more ideas on how to get better. Thank you so much. This has been a Fuel production.